Oh, man, do I have the present of a lifetime for you. So I actually spoke with, for probably about the last 20 minutes, one of the best independent writers from Voyager, Deep Space Nine, Next Generation. His name, I can't remember his last name, to be totally honest, but he wrote the Omega Directive, which is, we both know, one of the best episodes of Voyager. So you can get his name there. But, so we were talking about stuff, talking about trivia. I know that you'll appreciate this because it's direct trivia. He said that, oh my God. So he said that he was also the only independent writer because he wasn't employed with Paramount. You know, he was just turning in scripts to them and stuff. He went to I'm gonna give it to you in order. So he went to a party at Brandon Braga's house, like pool party, and it's him, Chase Masterson, and I can't remember someone else, Renee, and not Odo. And he said, "We are 3 sheets to the wind drunk." And Chase says, "I want to do something different with my character." And Jimmy goes, "Meanwhile, I'm drunk." He goes, "Why don't we have you break up with Bashir and have you start dating Rom?" So they did it, and everyone was like, "That's hilarious, let's do it." So in Dr. Bashir, I presume, she breaks up with Bashir and starts dating Rom. So like that whole thing, and he was like, "Yeah, it's totally out of left field, totally just, you know, right, totally out of left field, right?" So he goes, "Yep, that was an idea that came up while I was drunk at Brandon's house." I was like, "Man, that is fucking hilarious." The other one is, he said in the trivia for Next Generation, he said, "Man, I don't know how many times when he was an intern that, you know, for like writing and stuff, that he got a script about Data getting emotions. And I go, you know, I think the only time that I really liked that was when Q snapped his fingers once and let Data laugh." And he was like, "Yeah, that's a well done one, but man, for every one of those, there's 100, 200 that are terrible, you know, or they're all the same or whatever." But that's not the big one. Oh, well, and neither is this next part. But so he told me that he tried constantly to get Spot killed on Next Generation. So I thought that was hilarious, and they kept saying, you know, Jerry Taylor and, you know, they're all saying, "Okay, well, we can't let you kill him." And he goes, "Okay, can I change him?" And they go, "Sure, we'll let you change him." And he goes, "Then I changed him into an iguana." So that's where that came from, is because the writer hated Spot, which I think is just so funny. He also came up with the idea when everyone in Next Generation was devolving, and Counselor Troy leaves that skin behind, and it's super creepy, right? That was his idea, and they actually let him keep the prop because Jerry Taylor liked it so much. Man, 3.5 minutes, and this is more trivia than anyone's gonna know, right? So I knew you'd appreciate this, even given the way that I'm recording it, which, you know, I don't prefer this way, but it's totally the correct way to do it. Now this is the big one. This is the gift. This, I think you should pause and get some water or a drink or something for, and sit back and relax as I tell you about an unproduced, unpurchased, fully written episode of Deep Space Nine that no one's ever seen or heard of, other than the writer and the people who denied it. And you and I get to know this. So he had the entire concept down, and so it starts with Deep Space Nine. They're at they're at the bar. They're at Quark's, and Quark is collecting lotto tickets, you know, and Odo's like, "Well, Quark, you know, is this legal?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm doing a sweepstakes, you know, like $20, you know, you win X amount of, you know, millions of dollars or whatever. Odo's like, well, can anyone actually win? He goes, yes, of course, it's all totally legal. I thought that was pretty close. Yes, of course, it's all totally legal, Odo. And so then Odo goes, okay, if this is going to help you go straight, I'll contribute. So he goes, thank you. Odo buys a ticket to basically it's like the Ferengi lottery, and not just like something of Quark's, right? So Odo buys in, business is normal, and then out of nowhere, Odo wins the lottery. So now Odo is a multi-millionaire, and in Ferengi currency, and Quark's like, oh my God, no way, Odo won. And so Odo's like, I don't want the money, I don't care about it. But Odo's, of course, totally brilliant, and so he's like, okay, well, I'm going to figure out how to give the money away. So instead of giving it away, because he's good with numbers, what he tries to do instead is make businesses and corporations that would be beneficial for the people, right? Like either create jobs or something like that. But he's too good with it, so he actually makes more money. So he makes more money than he loses, and he's like, well, damn, this isn't working. And Quark, of course, is just like ripping his lobes off, like, oh my God, here this guy is, who's this multimillionaire. He's making so much Ferengi money. And then because Odo keeps buying businesses and doing stuff like, with the Ferengi economy, I think he actually ends up owning like 51% of like the total assets on Ferenginar. So the Nagus and a bunch of, like Brund and, everyone else and a bunch of different Ferengi nobles of different houses and everything, and trade companies and whatnot, come in a Marauder to DS9, and they try to make Odo Nagus, and Quark is, of course, freaking out. And Odo goes, I don't want this. In fact, like, I'm just going to sell everything. And they go, oh, no. And then Nagus tells them, no. You can't do that. Like, you have to understand that, like, the Ferengi stock market is how we control everything. Like, it controls everything. It controls the amount of money that we have to, feed in school and keep up the health of our people. That's what we use, for everything. He's like, you can't sell. It will literally crash our economy. And he goes, okay, but I don't want this. And they go, yeah, well, you have it. So he just kind of continues about his business and is trying to basically avoid the celebrityhood of being the richest man in Ferenginar. And then, so because he's really good with numbers and he's looking at his corporations and everything, trying to like kind of pare down and get out of it, right? What he ends up doing is, because he's past billionaire, right? He's just stupid amounts of money. And he then sees that someone is buying up very specific sectors, like, some, fuel, dilithium mines, like, they're buying up very specific sectors and industries of Ferenginar, right? And whether Odo owns it or not. And they are putting interest in, and so their interest is growing, and Odo, being a whiz with numbers, especially after all of this, he's even better, is looking at, like, he's trying to read the pattern, right? And he goes, oh, somebody is trying to destabilize the economy of Ferenginar, and if they do that with these different purchases, that'll actually start to destabilize the entire Alpha Quadrant. So he starts putting the pieces together more and more, and then realizes, oh my God, it's the Dominion. So then he, after figuring this out, he actually goes to Ferenginar because, he, and with his newfound friends, basically, of all the different Ferengi houses and everything, he goes to Ferenginar and then physically goes to their stock market, and there are aliens trading there. They all look like, they're little green men, basically. He didn't describe how they looked, but he said, they're very cerebral in nature. They're probably a lot like the Bynars kind of thing, and they are bargaining on behalf of the Dominion. And so Odo is watching the stock market go up and down, seeing what they're buying. And so he's like, okay, it's time to take action. At critical moments, he would say, buy, sell. And so he would start to collapse what the Dominion had bought, and then buy it up or totally collapse it, so they would lose all their money. And so eventually, because Odo was buying so much into a negative profit, he just starts losing money, right? And so then these aliens, eventually he bankrupts the Dominion, right? Not like the whole thing, but this part of the operation, he totally bankrupts them and himself in the process. So the writer Jimmy was like, yep, one of them puts a disruptor in his mouth and lets it rip. The others are hitting themselves on the head. There are these whizzes with numbers. And he said, that's kind of that, right? But Odo noticed through this process that up on one of the balconies, because obviously it's going to be this posh, rich, place, that there's a figure in the shadows. Not a Babylon 5 reference. There's a figure just kind of standing there, and he moves slowly forward after the Dominion's bankrupted, and Odo looks up, and this person looks down, steps more out of the shadows, and it's the most evil-looking, sinister-looking Ferengi that he's ever seen, ever. And the Ferengi simply bows to Odo. Odo bows to the Ferengi, and the Ferengi slips back into the shadows. But you can still see the hallway where he is. There's arches or something like that. You can see his shadow moving along. But as he departs, his shadow changes. And so he was either a changeling or some other alien that was influencing the whole process. But what's funny is it's still not over. So now, after all of this, he's no longer Nagus or Morgus, I think, is like, basically the richest man on Ferenginar. And because they wanted to make him the Nagus, and he said no. And so then they get back to Deep Space Nine, and another procession shows up. And they said, and the Nagus goes, Odo, for basically the protection that you've and service to the Ferengi people, we want to make you the Ogla, which is their chief of security, FBI, CIA, internal affairs, all of that. They want to make him the head of everything, and Quark loses it. He's like, oh my God, no, I'll never be able to do another dirty deal ever again. And the episode ends with all of them going into a conference room, Odo graciously accepting the reward and responsibility, and then going over to the doors and then staring at Quark the entire time as he closes the doors, and then Quark's horrified face, and the episode ends. And you know what it was called? Liquid Assets. So, man, that was, boy, what a treat to be able to hear all that trivia and that cool unpurchased episode that Jimmy ended up writing up. He also talked to me about Omega Directive, and basically the writers and everybody dared him, the Prime Directive, you can't overcome it. And he goes, I'll show you. And so he said it was a move of ego, but I did it. And so, I told him I knew the whole episode. He explained it all anyway. But he was like, I love the idea that there was one thing that the Prime Directive didn't cover, but it was still good for the universe and humanity and everything. Like, because of interstellar travel. So that is my gift to you, Gabe, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that that was fun to listen to. But I wanted to record it as soon as I got back to my hotel room because I wanted to keep everything fresh. So, man, have a great night, obviously, and I'm sure we'll continue chatting more. But, yep, there's your gift.